What's up everyone, thanks for tuning in. So today I'm going to show you guys how to remove a manual transmission from a third generation Accord. Some other stuff that you guys might pick up in this video would be like how to remove or change out the axles, as well as change out some bushings, as well as some of the stuff in the front suspension, as well as like shift linkage, so on and so forth. So a lot of good information packed in this video, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so for those of you that have been following the channel, this is the vehicle I'm going to be pulling the transmission from. Now this transmission is the first generation Integra hybrid gears, so it has the ZC first through fourth gear with the stock Accord fifth, with the first generation Integra ZC final drive. So I'm going to be pulling this out. I'm planning on rebuilding it, as well as throwing in the WaveTrack B16 limited slip differential into it, unless by some miracle, by the time I plan on buying those parts, that A to B series transmission adapter plate is made to where I am going to go that route instead. But as of right now, it looks like that's not going to be the case, so that's what I'm going to do. So before we get started, the first thing I recommend you guys do is drain the transmission, drain out all the liquid, and then start off by removing the axles. The vehicle's jacked up. Make sure you have your jack stands and all safety precautions taking place. Make sure your lugs are all loosened up, as well as this axle nut before you jack the car up. So this axle nut is 32 millimeter. You're going to need a 32 millimeter socket to remove it. It's going to come notched right there. Use a screwdriver to pry it up. And then the best way to break it loose off the axle nut, or the axle itself, is an impact is the best way I found. You guys can use breaker bars and such, but if you really want an easy way and fast way of doing it, impact would really help. So now that the axle nuts and lug nuts are broken loose, the car's jacked up, you go underneath, get your pan, your transmission. You need a 3/8 ratchet. It's gonna go right here. This is the drain. Let's pop it in there. Like that, and then look how clear that is. 10W30. I barely drove this car. I just did this to test out the transmission when I put the gears in. Let that drain out while you're working on the rest of your suspension. Another good idea too, I'm not sure if the OEM drain bolt is magnetic, so if you ever want to replace it with a magnetic one, now would be a good time to do it, or in your next transmission fluid change. And to fill the transmission, if you guys were going to do this, just be right there. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. Fill it up until the fill bolt starts pouring out as the car is leveled, and you're good to go on that. Okay, with the wheel and axle nut off, I will show you guys now what suspension parts you need to work with to be able to remove the axle out. I already did the driver's side. Doing the passenger side is a bit easier, and the driver's side is just longer, but the process is still the same. So the first thing that you would want to do, at least that I do, is 14 millimeter. Remove this bolt that pretty much holds down the shock body to the fork, and then 217, preferably an open end and one socket on both ends of here, the bottom where the forks connect to the lower control arm. And then I believe this is 17 as well, the lower control arm nut with cotter pin. I'll show you a trick on how to take this out that does not require the special tool. And then you're gonna have to, so you can go about this two different ways. You can either undo this, it's not a tie rod, but you get, this goes to the steering rack. Undo this from the bottom here and unhook it here, because basically what you want this whole upper control arm to do is come forward this way, so that you're able to slip the axle out from here. But the way I'm going to do it, the way I've done it before, so as you can see, the upper ball joint bushings have seen better days. So what you can do is take this dust cover off, two 10 millimeter bolts, one I already snapped off all back, and then there is I believe a 14 or 17 millimeter nut in there with cotter pin, just as the lower control arm nut. Remove that. You got to get a pickle fork, put it underneath here, and then pry it off, and then this whole unit should come down. The way I'm going to do it, if for say you guys have just replaced your upper control arm bushings, or your upper control arm bushings are still good, another way you can do it to preserve it is go up from up top and undo the whole upper control arm. These two nuts right here, sorry, this one and this one, And then the whole upper control arm should come down. So with the lower control arm undone and then the upper undone, all of this front suspension right here assembly should just be able to move forward to where you'd be able to pry that axle part that goes to the transmission off and then slips this out towards this way. Okay, for the record, I made this already kind of easy. I already broke loose most of these bolts off, so I'll just guide you through it. So first, top one, 14 millimeter, 14. And if you haven't already, this is a good time to, where if they're not seized already, depending where you live, definitely do some anti-seize on these bolts. I've been lucky so far. The only time I've ever had to cut off bolts from it seizing up is from BK. And then this bottom here where the fork connects to the lower control arm is going to be 17 millimeter on both ends, so definitely have a 17 millimeter open end as well. Okay, there's the nut right here. And then sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Pull it out. If you have problems, just get like a rubber mallet or whatever, or just the back of the socket, just knock it out. But other than that, it shouldn't be that bad. And this fork, work with it. Okay. Like that. And then off of it goes. Okay. And then now, so let's see if you guys can see this. Okay, hang on, I'm gonna try to make it easy for you guys. Okay, hopefully this helps. So what I found to help take out some of these cotter pins now, for sure, if you guys can, replace cotter pins, because they do go bad in this thing. It's kind of a life or death thing sometimes, or most of the time. So if you have it straightened out and you're having problems, actually just the open end I'm using actually, so I'm holding the phone up. So what I find is straightening this out, if you're having problems trying to take out the cotter pin, work with this nut, like tightening and loosening it to where you can find a sweet spot to where you'll be able to just yank it out, just like that. And then that's what I found helps me. I believe this is 17 millimeter. Yep. Okay, so make sure to put everything together. So put this nut along with the cotter pin together so you don't lose those. Now, so here comes the trick. Here's a cool little trick that I learned from a forum. It was either 3Gs or Honda Tech, but regardless, it was a cool little trick on how to pop out the lower control arm, or sorry, I guess you could say the hub assembly from the lower control arm without needing a special tool. So I got it jacked up, as you can see. Now, this all kind of depends if your lower control arms have ever been popped out before or numerous times, but if it hasn't, more than likely you're going to need a bigger socket. I'm using a 13 millimeter, and what you want to do is slip it in right here. Okay, so I'm going to jack it up a little bit more. Slip it in just to where it fits in right there. You guys can see it. And then drop it. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so it's still in there. So, just like that. Sometimes it's been still stuck on there before where I've actually would have to like push down on it or like give it a quick kick down here and it'll just pop it right out. So there's a cool trick for you guys if you guys ever need to do lower control arm work and you don't have the special tool required to pop it out like that. Okay, so I didn't record it, but just use either a pry bar or flathead screwdriver and then go underneath here and then pry this off. Don't yank on the shaft, haha, to be able to do it, or else you're gonna risk damaging the boot or whatnot. So what you want to end up doing, pry it off, and then you can actually grab this or you can bring it down, push against yourself. This, that drop. Now you can push or get it with a rubber mallet or something, which I do have right here. If that's not working, then you can use pry bar or screwdriver too to pry it off from the hub assembly. There you go. And there goes the passenger side axle. Okay. There you go. So I know I said to either disassemble the steering rack arm or the upper control arm. Obviously that's not needed, as you can just do that. Okay, so Now on to the next part. Okay, now that we have the transmission fluid drained and both driver and passenger side axles removed, you can either go up top and remove the starter, or keep it in place and just unwire it. It's completely up to you. Obviously, if you're going to be dropping the transmission from underneath the vehicle, you kind of want as less physical things in the way to remove, but it's up to you. I might actually do it with the starter in this time, now that I actually have a bigger and better jack. Or if you don't want to do the starter, you guys can go underneath the vehicle and start unbolting the shift linkage, and from there on disconnecting some of the bolts that the transmission bolts to onto the lower subframe. I'll show you that. And the one weird special thing about this chassis of how it actually has a transmission mount to the firewall right here, the dog bone, or the dog bone, also known as. So yeah, I'm gonna go start out doing that. Okay, so if you guys were planning on removing the starter, I figure I'd just show you guys a quick guide on how to do that. It's super simple. It's just 2 bolts actually mounting the starter in place. Now keep in mind, I should have said this in the beginning of the video, your setups may vary and differ a lot from mine, whether fuel injected or carbureted. But I will tell you that as far as the starter goes, there is a difference in starters for automatic and manual ones. Ask me how I know. Let's just say AutoZone gave me an automatic one, and I will say it will start the car, it just won't sound nice when it starts. So as far as wiring goes on this one, so this is, keep in mind, a manual starter. This goes from the engine wiring harness, goes there, and then this is your power harness right here, and then it goes there. And there should just be a nut and a lock and a nut and a lock washer on here. And then as far as wiring, that's it. And then as far as unbolting from the transmission, there's 2 14mm bolts, one right here. Extensions are for sure needed. That one's easy. And then the hard one, if I can get this on camera, is right there. And that's it. Once you undo those, it pops right off and you're good to go. Okay, time to undo the shift linkage, and I do not know the name of this. I want to say it's like the shift linkage stabilizer or something like that. It's the bar that goes perpendicular to the shifter itself. Well, anyway, so be prepared to see all this mess. Okay, so this is that stabilizer bar. Give you an idea where it goes back there. And then the shift linkage goes to the transmission, goes all the way back there. Now, there's a bolt right here. It goes on top, 12mm, loosen it up, and then this will come off. And then this is going to be 10mm. That comes off, and then this falls right down. And as far as the shift linkage connected to the transmission should go, that should be it. Okay, so the shifter linkage is off. Now, put this stabilizer bar thingy. So there's that plate, and then it just slides off. Like so. Got that washer. Don't use that, and whatever just fell. This thing goes on the other end of this, I'm assuming. Okay. As far as shift linkage and all that stuff goes, you're done with that. Okay, so now on what's left as far as the bottom stuff to unbolt. So there's this whole assembly right here, this whole mount. Now, took these 2 bolts off, 14mm. Now you can take this whole assembly out. It goes back here, but it is a pain to do. You can do it, but it's a pain. The hardest part's gonna be when you put the transmission back on. But honestly, if I took my time, I would have been able to do it, and I have better stuff, better tools, and better jacks and stuff like that. So I'll be able to reinstall it much easier. As far as, and the same thing with this. So these 2 bolts you see right here is connected to its a mount that's also connected to the block. There's also 2 right here. One here, one there. 14mm open end. If you undo these, it'll come off from the transmission, and there's that. You wouldn't have to, if you don't undo these and you only undo those 2, then the transmission will come out and will take this whole assembly along with it. So I'm going to undo these 2 right here from the transmission, as well as this, because then this whole assembly is going to stay with the transmission when it comes off. The only hard part is going to be reinstalling. Okay, so now the only thing left to do up top would be just like all the little stuff before we actually start unbolting the bolts on the bell housing. So one thing you can start doing, doesn't matter what order you guys do this in, you can undo the clutch cable, unplug or unscrew the reverse switch, this wire right here. Yeah, you guys should know the reverse switch. Just follow this wire and it's in the box. You can unscrew it or you can just unplug it. It's just two plugs right there, those two right there. And then it's not installed right now, but there also is a speedo cable that goes right in there. See that hole? Yeah, usually there's a speedo cable, goes all the way into the firewall, but that speedo cable is currently in my DA Integra right now. So yeah, and then just either you can undo this or undo the whole bracket. Now I'm trying to remember, I know one of these cars, it was either the coupe or this one, I'm pretty sure it was this car, that the bolts actually, I don't know how, but they got seized onto here, and it's seized on pretty bad. And I know this because I actually tried taking off this bracket while the transmission was out of this vehicle, so I may try at it again. Hopefully I have some better luck. And as far as on top goes, that should be it before attacking the bolts on the bell housing. Okay, it's kind of tricky getting this camera angle, but hopefully it works out for you guys. Show you guys how this works. So flip this collar off. Here's the clutch cable. Just loosen this. And the cable is going to go down, and then it just, if you guys can see this, slides right out. And then this rubber grommet comes out, and then cable just slides out just like that on both ends. So clutch cable is done. And I don't know if you guys can see this, probably not. Just unplugging the two wires for the reverse switch. Nope, now you guys really can't see anything. Well, there's the reverse switch, and you can see it ripped one of the wires off, so I'm gonna either need to resolder that or just another one. No biggie, but hey, for a car being this old, and it happens. Okay, you're gonna have these two hoses that goes to the speed sensor housing or whatever. And be honest, man, I have no idea what these hoses are for. Like if I follow them, it just kind of goes and branches off to that T right here that you can see moving. So I know I did like almost every delete you could on this vehicle, so I don't know. I don't know what it goes to. So if you guys know what it is, let me know. Okay, bolt for the dog bone mount is off, and you're gonna need a 19mm to get this off. So I'm gonna try to work this again. Like I said, I can't remember if this is the one that gave me trouble last time. And if I can't get these out, then they're staying in, obviously. I'm just gonna jack the car up higher. And the last thing I gotta unbolt on here is gonna be this rear transmission mount. Okay, so before I start tackling the bell housing bolts, I already have a 2x4 with, or sorry, a jack with a 2x4. Slightly jacked up on the transmission, just enough to where once the 2x4 touches it, just give it one more to where you can see the transmission move, just so you know that there's some weight on the 2x4, so that when you're undoing the bolts, you're not going to put too much strain on like one or two bolts. Usually that's not a huge problem, but definitely when you take the last bolt off, the last thing you want is it just, you know, it might come out and collapse. I doubt that would happen, but this just makes everything easier, especially when you drop it on. And another cool thing too, just add a piece of 2x4 or a piece of cardboard or whatever, just so you can either work the transmission on it to be able to pull it out, so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be cardboard, it can be a creeper or skateboard or whatever. I've used a skateboard before and that's helped. So yeah, I'm gonna start taking out those bell housing bolts. Okay, so this is the rear transmission bracket, and you're gonna need to unbolt 3 of these bolts, one there, one there, and one there. I believe they're 14mm. If you don't unbolt that, you can just unbolt the nut up top here, which I'll show you later on. But the problem with that is when you lower the transmission, this whole bracket's going to come with it, and it's just going to create a lot of problems. So it's just easier just to undo these 3 bolts and just take it off. Okay, so everything that you need to get to underneath and on top is pretty much done. Now that this bracket's out of the way, so I will say that the top bolt that's inside the concave portion of this bracket, it's easier to get it up top than it is in the bottom, just because the breather box gets in the way of a ratchet or whatever. I mean, if you guys have the right tools, you might be able to do it from underneath, but that's, I'm telling you what works for me. So the last bolts I'm going to work on right now are going to be the bolts on the bell housing. So all the bolts that attaches the transmission to the block. So you're going to have a total of, I believe, 4 right now. So 1, 2, I can't point at it, but you guys get the idea. 3 and 4. So then these two you're seeing, that one that is confirmed to be stripped, and that one is just to the bracket itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to crack these bolts loose, and I'm going to do them in even order. So left, right, center, left, center, right, just to even out the tension of it and stuff. And then yeah, hopefully that should be it, and the transmission should just come right off. Okay, all 4 are out, and to my knowledge, as of right now, there should be nothing holding this transmission, well, nothing bolting it in place. Okay, so I'm pretty sure one of the starter bolts does actually mount the transmission in place. I'm about to find out right now. Actually, I've never taken the transmission out without taking the starter out. I thought it would work, but obviously I'm wrong. So I'm going to put a little like pop-up in the beginning of this video indicating that you do need to remove the starter to take the transmission out. So hopefully this should work this time. Oh, yep, definitely. So removing the starter is a must. Make sure you don't have any wires or cords or hoses or anything like that can get caught on the way down. Like, I wish I could take the dog bone bracket off, but I cannot because one of the bolts is stripped. Okay, that's as far as it's going to go. From there. Alright, proceed to drop it more. I'm definitely going to project this car up a little bit higher. It's basically free floating right now. Something coolant-wise got hit. A little too low than I wanted. I'll figure it out later. You want to bring it towards you, bring it away from the collection and whatnot. Yep, here it goes. Yeah, you don't want that main shaft getting locked in there, getting all that weight. That's why I do small increments of lowering it. I think it's caught on the heater hose. Okay, no. Well, that's what's definitely what it caught. Yeah, it sliced up the heater hose. Oh well. It is what it is. Yeah, this is biting in the heater hose. I'm pretty sure. Okay, now it's not touching that yet. Alright, I'm just gonna lower it the rest of the way. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that heater hose is like the only thing holding it right now. Just put it over here for now, just so it doesn't completely hit the ground. Yep, the heater hose. That heater hose held that thing in midair, just like that. Crazy, it sliced it up. Cool, there you go. All right, now I'm just going to jack the car up higher. key thing to make this the easiest, have one big jack. If you have a small one, like I showed you before, it is pretty hard. Doable, but definitely a lot more difficult. Take that board out. Again, it'd be super easy if that bracket wasn't there, but there you have it. Sucks to hit that heater hose, but whatever. A little bit faster than I wanted to. All right, everyone. Well, there you go. Hopefully that helped. Yeah, that bracket caught on to this heater hose right here. It literally cut right into it and held it in place. Pretty nuts. There's I believe it's like a stage 2 or stage 3 ACT clutch I got years ago. Grabs pretty hard. Alrighty. Alright guys, that about wraps it up. Hopefully you guys got a lot of good information and tips in this video that has to do or not to do with transmission removal on these cars. So this should also work on like 2nd gen Preludes as well as 1st generation Integras to a certain extent. I don't see why not. So that about does it, guys. If you have any questions, ask me in the comments down below. Also hit me up on Instagram, Asian_Zensation, both spelled with Z's. And again, I'll answer you guys as fast as I can when I can. Tomorrow is Memorial's Day, so all you guys and girls that served in the military or police, first responders, EMS, firefighters, all you guys, thank you so much for all the stuff you guys do. You guys will always have my support. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you for watching.